Good morning. This is a reading from Upstream, which is a collection of essays by Mary Oliver. It was published near the end of her life, and she is reflecting back on a day in her childhood when she went out and kind of got lost. I walked all one spring day upstream, sometimes in the midst of the ripples, sometimes along the shore. My company were violets, Dutchman's breeches, spring beauties, trillium, bloodroot, ferns rising so curled one could feel the upward push of the delicate hairs on their bodies. My parents were downstream, not far away, then farther because I was walking upstream instead of downstream. Finally, I was advertised on the hotline of help, and yet there I was, slopping along happily in the stream's coolness. So maybe it was the right way after all. If this was lost, let us all be lost always. The beech leaves were just slipping their copper coats, pale green and quivering they arrived into the year. My heart opened and opened again. The water pushed against my effort, then its glassy permission to step ahead touched my ankles. The sense of going toward the source. Little by little, I waded from the region of Coltsfoot to the spring beauties, from there to the trilliums, from there to the bloodroot, then the dark ferns, then the wild music of the water thrush. After the water thrush, there was only silence. Sometimes the desire to be lost again, as long ago, comes over me like a vapor. With growth into adulthood, responsibilities claimed me. So many heavy coats. Now, in the spring, I kneel. I put my face into the packets of violets, the dampness, the freshness, the sense of everness. Something is wrong, I know it, if I don't keep my attention on eternity. May I be the tiniest nail in the house of the universe, tiny but useful. May I stay forever in the stream.
We are a worshiping community, rooted in covenant rather than in creed. Weekly, you and I commit ourselves to being a life-saving space for all people. Today, we acknowledge that part of our covenant commitment is to give a life-saving space time to our pastor for her refreshment. It's called a sabbatical. Sabbatical is a concept that grows from the ancient idea of Sabbath, a day of rest after 6 days of work. In the UU tradition, a ministerial Sabbath is an extended day of respite from the 6 metaphorical days of professional responsibilities in order to create opportunity for rest, renewal, and education. And you need to know that there's no requirement for an end product. Our hope is just that Laura will return enlivened, refreshed, and bringing us new perspectives. To support Laura's sabbatical, which will last until August the 14th, the board, on your behalf, along with Reverend Laura and along with Reverend Carol Bodeau, who will be serving us as the sabbatical minister for pastoral care, we have all entered into a covenant together regarding who will be responsible for doing what during this time. and you should be able to read the text of the whole covenant from the link that's in the chat box. And believe me, you don't want me to read the whole thing to you right now. But one of the most important commitments that we all make is to honor the sabbatical period by sustaining participation in the life of this fellowship through worship, ministry, and financial stewardship. In other words, that is by doing what we normally do. A couple of weeks ago, Laura asked the board what it is we hope for the congregation during this time, what we hope for our own period of renewal. And here is some of what we said. One person said, "I have great hope that we will come to do good works together, that we will grow to be kinder, wiser, more considerate, and more generous, and that we will hear all of our voices lifted up in rendered joy." Rendered joy is that joy that stretches, reaches up, concentrates, and seeks form so that it is more precious and felt more deeply. And so I welcome arts, crafts, efforts at activities, things that task us and ask us to grow. Another person said, "I hope that there will be a spiritual continuation of the church in your absence, that the membership will feel that they have someone to turn to while you're on sabbatical, and that we take the full opportunity of building good sermons and extracurricular activities." Another board member said, "My hope for the congregation is that we use this time to reflect on what's most important to us, personally and for our congregation, and then we refocus our time and attention on these things that really matter." And lastly, a board member said, "I'm looking forward to a time for us to connect, both within our congregation and with other congregations, and also the larger UU world. We can both deepen our relationships and broaden our vision. It's a great time for us to grow our capacities as individuals within this wonderful, loving congregation." I hope that as you listen to these notions for our part of the sabbatical, that there was something there that caught your attention, sparked your interest, so that you will begin to think about what is your hope for us as the journey continues. And very shortly, you'll be able to express some of that.
Thank you, Autumn. And thank you, Sherry, for bringing that reading to us today from Mary Oliver. I want to reflect a little bit with you all this morning. I considered doing a review of the last 8.5 years, and I couldn't do it. And you wouldn't want me to do that. But I have been thinking back a bit, in 2011, I became a parent. It was 2 weeks after my year-long ministerial internship, which is a requirement for our credentialing process in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. It was about a year after I graduated from seminary. 2 weeks after I became a parent, I began my first ministry position as the interim family minister at the UU Church of Berkeley in California. And by the time our daughter was 15 months old, we had moved to Tennessee. And I began serving this congregation in October of 2012. 2 years later, in 2014, our family grew again with twins this time. So my entire time as a minister, I have also been parenting young children. Those children are now in 4th and 1st grade, as many of you know, and we are all making it through this very strange school year, not always gracefully, but we are making it through. So I generally dislike comparing the minister to a parental figure, though many people do it because, well, it's paternalistic. It can be paternalistic. I am not your mom. Our relationship is not whatever your relationship is or was with your mom, right? But I have grown to think a comparison, a very specific comparison might be useful. And I want to share that with you today, because I have been thinking about how becoming a parent is stepping off on a journey with other human beings and supporting them to become their best selves, while you are also trying and often failing at being and becoming your own best self. The journey is not always lovely, and you really do not know exactly where you will end up or where your children will end up, but you stay on that journey together. You know, you go through those beautiful and sunny days, you go up the big hills that sap your energy, you go through the brambles and the thickets that try to snare you and hold you back. And no matter what, even if you don't really see each other on the path for a while, you are always concerned about their well-being. Are they okay? Do they have what they need to keep going? Are they having fun? And mostly you realize as they grow older, how much is out of your control, how the best thing you can do is to simply be on the journey with them as a witness, loving them, hearing and holding them when they need it, encouraging them, providing tools for them to navigate this world and make their own decisions. So even though I hate these parental metaphors for ministry, I'm making one today because I think ministry in our Unitarian Universalist tradition is much the same as what I just described about being on a journey together, a shared journey. Though certainly the commitment is not with the exact same people in ministry for one's entire life. But it is a commitment to being a witness to the joys and the sorrows, a commitment to being an encourager and a tool provider, and knowing that the most important decisions about your individual lives are not mine to make. Knowing that the most important decisions about this congregation and who we will be are also not mine to make alone. My colleague, Reverend Sharon Wiley, when she was preparing for her first sabbatical, said this to her congregation. She said, "I did not become a minister in order to be apart from the people I serve. But it is also true, I did not become a minister for you to be dependent on me." I've been holding that bit of wisdom with me as I prepare for this sabbatical. I've been journeying with this congregation for 8.5 years now. And last year, when I postponed my planned sabbatical because of the pandemic, there just was not a question in my mind that it was the right thing to do. And now I feel the same way about taking this sabbatical time. It is the right thing for me to do now. It is very strange for me to really disconnect from you all for these next few months until August 15th. Whether I've known you individually all these last 8.5 years or just the last few months, I love you, and it is not possible for me to just turn that off. And I also know deeply that I need to strike off the well-worn path a little bit. I need to let myself get a little bit lost and explore some new territories. The poet John O'Donohue writes about the out of the way places of the heart where the thoughts never think to wander. And I want to wander there for a little while and see what I find. I want to wander upstream towards my source, as Mary Oliver put it. And I hope that that wandering will help me reorient to what enlivens me and sparks creativity in me so that I can more joyfully serve with you all. So I'm going to rest some, I'm going to read some, I'm going to write some, I will do some continuing education. I will have some alone time, a little bit. And I will have a different kind of time with my family. And keeping it real for y'all, we will celebrate making it through this school year together with a semblance of sanity intact. That is also part of this sabbatical. I am so, so grateful for this gift. Thank you. And I'm going to honor the spirit of this gift by not over-scheduling myself and not over-expecting some great enlightenment during my sabbatical. And I will honor the sabbatical by not forgetting the privilege of this gift. And so what about you all? I invite you to think of this sabbatical as continuing on the journey, not a rest stop. I have taken a different fork in the road for a while, and we'll come back together to share what we've seen and what we've learned and what adventures we have been on. I have every confidence in the world that you all will be fine in my absence. This congregation is healthy, and together we have done incredible things this last under really incredible, challenging circumstances. You all are blessed with a couple of really fabulous staff, with Hannah Strong and with Lauren Hulse, and with Allison Rayfield as our bookkeeper, and with Jeannie Cuevas helping out with administrative functions in the office. I know my presence with you matters, but I surely hope that you show up for more than me. First of all, that's just way too much pressure. And second of all, that is not what our tradition and our covenant asks of us. My one request of you all during my sabbatical is that you continue to show up for each other and for love. That's it. That will look really different depending on who you are, but I ask you today to think about how you can make that commitment over the next few months. Amy, Beth, and the worship team, Sherry Brewer and the compassionate care team, and all of those of you who show up when asked to care for one another, Reverend Carol Bodeau, all of you who serve and learn and play together in this congregation, you are what keeps this congregation going. And the board will continue to hold these big questions out in front of us. Questions like, where's our mission calling us to be in our community now? How do we best use our resources towards that mission? What are the different possibilities for how we will be a congregation, both virtually and in person in the future? And I hope to return with some fresh perspective on those questions, but you all cannot be dependent on me to answer those questions for you. So do some exploring of your own. It's okay, even great, if y'all get a little lost during the sabbatical too. Go off the beaten track and see what you learn. Be brave and ask some questions of each other that you haven't asked before. If nothing else, this pandemic has shown us that we can throw all of our previous well-laid plans out the window and keep going, carrying that which is essential into new territory. Given the swift economic and climate changes in our world, I believe we will continue to be called to be that nimble. So you have heard some hopes from the board. Thank you, Autumn. And in a moment, you will be asked to share your own blessings and hope sabbatical time. So get ready, we're going to use that Mentimeter tool again. But first, I want to say out loud my blessings and hopes for you, for all of us in this sabbatical season. May we feel each other's encouragement on the journey. May we follow beauty, even if it takes us off the beaten path. May our hearts open and open again to new ways, to new people, to new ideas. May we move ever closer towards the source of life, keeping our attention on eternity, that which is essential. May we have good company along the way. May we find our own ways to be of use, however small, the tiniest nail in the house of the universe. And may we find ourselves at home on the continued journey. May it be so. And now, in a word or two, I invite you to share your own hopes and blessings for this sabbatical time, not just for me, but for all of us. And so, Hannah, I'll ask you to bring that slide back up again.